They say every neighborhood has one apartment you should never look at, one door you should never knock on, one neighbor who seems normal, until the night they suddenly disappear. But what if your neighbor doesn't just vanish? What if they whisper through your walls after they're gone? What if they watch you from an empty apartment? What if they leave behind handprints, teeth, or a voice that follows you, no matter where you move? Tonight, you will hear 3 chilling tales. 3 neighbors who should never have existed. 3 vanishings that were never accidents. And by the time you finish listening, you might start wondering, is your neighbor really human? Or are they the next one who vanishes and comes back for you? Story Part 1. For 10 seconds, listen closely, because if you ever hear footsteps outside your door at 3 a.m., slow, dragging, and deliberate, you need to pray it isn't someone who vanished years ago. My name is Daniel, and until last year, I lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing ever happened. People mowed their lawns every Sunday, kids rode their bikes in circles, and neighbors smiled politely without ever speaking too much. I moved there hoping for peace, but what I found was a story no one in that town wants to remember. It started with the house across the street, a faded blue single-floor home with peeling paint and a dead tree by the window. It looked abandoned, yet every night around 10 p.m., a dim orange light would flicker inside, not bright enough to illuminate anything, just faint enough to prove someone was in there. The neighbors avoided talking about the place. Whenever I asked, they'd either change the topic or walk away entirely. The first night I noticed something was wrong was 3 days after I moved in. I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee when a man stepped out of the blue house. Tall, extremely thin, wearing an oversized gray sweater that hung down to his knees. His face wasn't something you forget. Pale, sunken cheeks, eyes too wide for comfort. He stared at me like he'd been waiting for me to come outside. He raised a shaky hand and waved. I waved back, but something in my stomach clenched. His smile was wrong, too slow, too forced. He didn't say anything. He just turned around and walked toward the backyard of his house. I remember thinking, why would someone live in a house that looks abandoned? Why wouldn't the neighbors talk about him? The next day, I went to the elderly couple living next door, Mr. and Mrs. Gordon, and casually asked, who lives across the street? They froze. Mr. Gordon's hand trembled so hard, he spilled the gardening soil he was holding. No one, he said quietly. I frowned, but I saw a man outside last night. Mrs. Gordon grabbed my arm firmly and whispered, if you want to stay here, don't look at that house, and don't speak to anyone who comes out of it. She didn't explain. They both simply turned and went inside, locking their door behind them. That night, around 3:12 a.m., I heard footsteps, slow, dragging, coming from outside my window. I sat up in bed, heart thumping. The sound wasn't hurried. It was patient, like someone taking their time. I peeked through the blinds. The man from the blue house was standing directly across the street, staring at my window. No blinking, no movement, just staring. His sweater looked even looser than before, almost like he was shrinking inside it. I stepped back from the blinds, breath stuck in my chest. When I looked again, he was gone. The next morning, I went to work early, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. When I returned home that evening, I noticed something strange. The blue house door was wide open. I don't know why I walked toward it. Curiosity or stupidity, I can't tell, but I felt like something was pulling me closer. As I reached the porch, I realized the wooden doorframe had deep claw-like scratches across it, as though someone had been dragged inside. The interior smelled like old, damp cloth and rotten wood. The floorboards creaked under each step. No furniture, no pictures, nothing but a single wooden chair facing a window and a faded rug underneath it. I took out my phone to use the light. My hand froze. Across the dusty floor were footprints, bare, long, and spaced unevenly. They led from the front door to the chair, then from the chair to the back door, and then suddenly stopped mid-floor, as if the person had vanished in the middle of walking. I felt a cold breeze behind me. I turned. No one. I should have run. but I kept telling myself I was imagining things. I walked backwards slowly toward the front door. Then, a whisper, directly behind my ear. Finally, someone saw me. I stumbled outside and ran straight home. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I confronted the Gordons again. I saw him, I said. The man in the sweater. And that house, someone was inside. Mrs. Gordon's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Gordon sighed deeply and motioned for me to sit. He's not alive, Mr. Gordon said, and he hasn't been for years. They told me the story. The man's name was Elias Crowley. He lived alone in that house, reclusive, quiet, strange but harmless. Then, one winter, he vanished. No trace. Police searched everywhere. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers, nothing. The town assumed he'd left or died somewhere in the woods, until people started seeing him again. At night, standing outside their homes, staring, never speaking, never knocking, just watching. Every time someone spotted him, he would appear closer the next night, closer and closer until he stood right outside their door. And the moment they opened it, even for a second, they disappeared. Just like him. The police dismissed it as paranoia, but the people of the town knew once Elias chose you, he didn't stop. So what do? I asked, terrified. Is there a way to make him go away? Mrs. Gordon shook her head. Don't acknowledge him, don't wave to him, don't look at him, pretend he doesn't exist. But I had waved. I had looked. I had stepped inside his house. The next few nights were unbearable. Footsteps circling my home, tapping on the windows, soft breathing outside my door. And the smell, his smell, that damp, rotting scent that leaked in through the vents. One night, around 2:50 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. All I heard was breathing. Slow. Rattling. Wet. I hung up immediately. The next day, I tried to leave town, but my car didn't start. The mechanic couldn't figure out why. He said it was like the engine had been drained of power. I didn't go back home that night. I booked a motel in the next town over. I barricaded the door. I kept the lights on. But at exactly 3:12 a.m., I heard it, dragging footsteps, coming down the motel hallway, stopping outside my room. I froze. The doorknob twitched, then twisted. I held my breath. A whisper came through the crack beneath the door. Why did you run? I didn't sleep. I didn't open the door until morning. When the sunlight finally came through, I packed everything and moved as far away as I could. A whole new state, new job, new life. For a while, things felt normal. Until last week. When I got home from work, there was an envelope taped to my front door. No address, no stamp, just my name. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph. A blurry picture of a tall, thin man in an oversized gray sweater, standing in my driveway, smiling, too slow, too forced. Underneath it, written in shaky handwriting, "You saw me once, you'll see me again." And here's the part that still makes my blood cold. On the back of the photo was my new home address, the one I hadn't told anyone yet. Which means only one thing. He didn't stay in that town. He followed me. And if you're hearing this story right now, remember something important. People like Elias don't stop at just one person. If you ever move to a new place and notice a house with a dim orange light, or hear footsteps outside your window at exactly 3:12 a.m., or see a man in a sagging gray sweater watching you without blinking, don't wave, don't look. Don't acknowledge him, because once he knows you've seen him, he never, ever stops. Story Part 2. If you ever move somewhere new and your neighbor waves at you every morning but disappears before you blink, don't wave back. Some people aren't supposed to be seen. My name is Laura, and 2 months ago I moved into a quiet apartment complex at the edge of the city. It was cheap, clean, and peaceful. Exactly what I needed after a messy breakup and a stressful job. Everything felt normal, except for one thing. Apartment 3C. No one ever came out of it. No deliveries, no footsteps, no lights. But every morning at exactly 6:45 a.m., when I left for work, the door would be slightly open, just an inch, and a man would be standing inside the shadowed doorway. Always the same man. Tall, neat black hair, white shirt tucked into dark pants, no expression, no movement except the faint tilt of his head as he looked at me. And every morning, as soon as I blinked, even half a second, he vanished. The door would slam shut by itself. At first I thought I was imagining it. Stress, trauma, lack of sleep. But after 5 days of the same thing happening, I asked the building manager, "Who lives in 3C?" I said. He stiffened immediately. "No one," he answered too quickly. "That apartment has been empty for 3 years. Don't bother with it." "But I saw. You didn't see anything." He turned around and walked away, refusing to discuss it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's motionless figure standing in that dark doorway. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong, about him. So I decided to test it. At 6:45 the next morning, instead of walking straight out the building like usual, I hid behind the hallway corner and peeked at 3C. The door creaked open on its own. Slowly, silently. There he was. Same man, same emotionless stare, same posture. But this time, he wasn't looking down the hallway. He was staring directly at the corner where I hid. Directly at me. I froze. My body couldn't even breathe. He lifted a hand, bent it slowly, and pointed straight at me. Then, blink. He vanished. I ran back into my apartment, slammed my door, and locked every latch. I didn't go to work. I didn't leave. I stayed inside until nightfall. Around 11:30 p.m., I heard something that made my bones turn to ice. A knock, soft, rhythmic, at my door. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then a voice, calm, cold, almost emotionless. "Laura, why did you hide?" I felt my throat close. He knew my name. How? I never told anyone except the manager. "Laura," the voice said again, slightly lower. "Open the door." I backed away slowly. The knocking stopped. Silence. For the next 2 hours, nothing happened, until I finally gathered the courage to look through the peephole. No one outside, but the hallway lights flickered, and the door to 3C was wide open. I decided I needed answers. I crossed the hallway and stepped inside the apartment. It was empty. No furniture, no lights, no scent of life. Except a single photograph on the floor, a picture of me, sleeping. My bedroom window in the background. My heart pounded so hard I almost dropped the photo. That picture could only have been taken from inside my room. I backed toward the door, but before I reached it, the door slammed shut with a violent force. The apartment went pitch black, and in the dark, I heard breathing. Right behind me. Slow, deep, hungry. I felt something cold touch the back of my neck. Then a whisper, "You can't leave now. You saw me." I screamed and threw myself against the door until it burst open. I ran outside, down the stairs, out of the building, and didn't look back. I stayed at a friend's house for 2 nights before deciding to return quickly to pack my belongings and move out for good. I walked into the building terrified, expecting him. But something was wrong. The hallway to my apartment was crowded with police officers and paramedics. Yellow tape everywhere, neighbors crying. I approached one of the officers. "What happened? What's going on?" He looked at me strangely. "A woman from apartment 3C was found dead this morning. Looks like she's been dead for at least 3 years. My heart stopped. 3 years? He nodded. Her name was Laura Collins. My full name. I felt the world tilt. I'm Laura Collins, the first stammered. "No," the officer said gently. "You're not. The woman we found. She matches your ID, your description, everything." That's when I saw the paramedics wheeling out a body bag. I saw her hand slip out. My hand, my ring, my bracelet, my scar, everything. I wasn't the one who survived. I wasn't the one who escaped. I was the one who vanished. And the thing I had been seeing, the thing that pointed at me, the thing that whispered my name, it wasn't him, it was me. The part of me trapped inside that apartment for 3 years. The part of me that died. The part of me that never left. And the neighbor who vanishes. It's not him you should fear. It's the version of yourself that never makes it out alive. Story Part 3. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the person living right next door was never supposed to exist. That's what happened to me. And if you're listening to this, don't look out your window, because once you see him, he won't go away. I moved into my apartment 6 months ago, a small, quiet building with only 8 units, the kind of place where you hear distant TV sounds, footsteps on the stairs, and the occasional neighbor arguing through thin walls. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening. But the first time I saw my new neighbor, something felt wrong. I was coming home late from work. The hallway was dim, the motion sensor light flickering uselessly. As I fumbled with my keys, I noticed a man standing in front of the door of Unit 3B, my next-door neighbor. He wasn't unlocking it, he wasn't knocking, he was just standing there, his head tilted slightly like he was listening to something inside. When he finally turned toward me, his eyes didn't look surprised, annoyed, or even curious. They looked empty, like he wasn't seeing me, just recognizing me. He nodded once, slow and stiff, then unlocked the door and disappeared inside. I told myself he was just socially awkward. Lots of people are like that. But I kept thinking about how silent his footsteps were, how he moved like he weighed nothing. The next night, I heard something strange. 3 taps on the shared wall between our units. Slow, evenly spaced. I tapped back to see if he needed something. Instantly, I heard his voice, right against the wall, whispering, "Are you awake too?" His tone was unsettling, half whisper, half breath, like he was speaking directly into the paint. I didn't respond. After that night, the tapping became constant. Sometimes late at night, sometimes early in the morning, always followed by that whisper, "Are you awake too?" One night, the whisper changed. This time he said, "Don't sleep, not when I'm here." That's when my fear turned into dread. I decided to talk to the building manager about him. She frowned when I mentioned Unit 3B. "There's no one living in 3B, she said. Her voice wasn't confused. It was firm, like she was correcting a child. I insisted, describing the man I'd seen. She shook her head. 3B has been empty for 5 years. The tenant died. No one has moved in since. I froze. I'd heard footsteps, conversations, a TV playing late at night, the tapping, the whispering, that voice. The manager must have seen the panic on my face, because she stood up and said she would open the unit for me to see. When she unlocked the door, a cold wave of air spilled out. The apartment was empty, dust on the counters, no furniture, no life. But the most terrifying part, on the inside of the wall, my wall, were dozens of handprints, small ones, large ones, some smeared like someone had been dragged. I backed away. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore the silence. At 3:11 am, it happened. My front door creaked open. Not fully, just a few inches. Enough to hear breathing, slow, measured, like someone trying not to be noticed. I grabbed my phone and whispered that I was calling the police. The breathing stopped, and then the door clicked shut again. When the police arrived, they checked the building, the hallways, even the roof. Nothing. No signs of intrusion. No footprints. No fingerprints. Nothing. One officer stayed back to talk. He leaned against the wall, then froze. Behind him, right where his head had been, came a faint tapping. 3 taps. Slow. Even. The officer stepped back, startled. And then, from the apartment next door, I heard that same whisper. "Are you awake too?" The officer asked who else lived on that floor. When I explained, he radioed his partner to check Unit 3B again. Minutes later, the radio crackled. 3B is empty. Still locked from the outside. But I heard someone inside, the officer muttered. "Me, too." The officer told me to pack a bag and leave for the night. I didn't argue. I went to stay at a friend's place. The next morning, I returned with 2 officers and the building manager. Something was different. The door to Unit 3B was open. On the floor, in the middle of the empty apartment, was a single object. My toothbrush, from my bathroom, as if someone had taken it and placed it there. The manager immediately called for the lock to be replaced. 2 hours later, a locksmith arrived. He was a small man, probably in his 60s. As he removed the old lock, he suddenly paused. He pointed to something inside the hollow part of the doorframe. A camera. Tiny, hidden, and angled directly at my apartment door. "Someone's been watching you," the locksmith whispered. I felt sick, violated, terrified. The building manager insisted on checking all the units for similar devices. And when she opened the closet inside 3B, she screamed. There were dozens of them. Cameras, lenses, wires, batteries, not arranged neatly, tossed around like someone had lived there, moving them, adjusting them, checking them. But who? There was no bed, no food, no clothing, just surveillance equipment. And then the smell hit us. Rotting, sour, foul. In the far corner of the closet lay a pile of clothes, dirty, stained. Human teeth scattered among them, not all adult-sized. Some tiny, some broken, some sharpened. The officers backed out immediately and sealed the apartment. One of them said quietly, "Someone was living here without being alive." I didn't ask what he meant. That night, I slept in a hotel. The next morning, I returned to start packing my things. But as soon as I stepped into my apartment, my stomach dropped. The shared wall between my unit and 3B had fresh handprints. New ones. Wet, as if someone had pressed their hands against the wall moments earlier. And written between them were 3 words, in long, dripping strokes. "You saw me. I ran. I didn't lock the door. I didn't pack. I left everything. I moved across the city and told myself I'd never look back." But last night, at exactly 3:11 a.m., someone knocked on my new apartment door. 3 taps, slow, even. I didn't open it, but I pressed my ear against the wood. And I heard a voice whisper, "Are you awake too?" I froze. The voice wasn't outside. It was coming from inside the wall. From the apartment next door. The end.